Yo,
What's
you
good?
good?
All good, bro. Good to see you again.
Yeah, I know. I've obviously been seeing all the movements from all of you. By the way, congratulations to all you guys. You've all done like stuff that a lot of people would love to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, and building your own platform and stuff. I've seen you all over the years, like growing through it. So it's sick, man. It's
I
always
appreciate
inspiring.
it, man.
Thank you, man.
Thank you,
Yeah, of
bro.
course.
It looks like you've changed places as well. Have you set up a new studio?
Yeah. So I built something in the garden,
Oh yeah, I
which is
remember you
nice.
saying actually. It looks
Yeah,
sick.
no,
Some nice
yeah,
Sims behind you.
yeah, it came.
Yeah,
I
it's looking
mean,
like a nice setup.
Yeah, that looks
yeah,
crazy.
it's the synth thing. It's like it's. I love playing with them, but what when you're like functionally at it with the work, like it's so hard to
Yeah.
incorporate sometimes, just because, and often it's like I don't know, man. Like especially when I'm working to brief or something like that, it's it to start there is always feels crazy. I usually gloss with it, but yeah, they're pretty, but they're neglected. Man. I hate to say it. I hate to say it. It kills me.
I'm the same, man. Well, I've only got one,
feel
but
you.
even mine's neglected. I've been saying this for a while. It's just like it just adds another step, doesn't it? Unless you've got everything
Yeah,
just connected perfectly and ready to go.
but you know
Any
what?
extra
Those
step
days,
plugging shit in.
those days where you just think, I'm going to turn them on, and you're like indulging it a bit.
Yeah.
The best way I ever get use out of them is literally to just hit record. Don't think about tempos, click tracks, or anything. I like just root them in and just play some stuff, and then in 3 months I
Yeah.
might resample because I did a mistake. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like you get
course.
that's where I get the most sort of like use out of them, I think. But they're milestones as well for us all, I think. Like when it's something you look up wanting for so long and thinking you need and whatever, and then you get a bit of money through doing music and you're like, I'll reinvest it, and it's like feels like a good idea and it's a good justification. It's a little present to myself, and it is and like I've got a different relationship with them all for that. Like I don't want to get rid of them. It's like
Yeah.
yeah,
Ocean knows
one
all
of them.
about that.
I just I miss my synth so much that I just shipped him here. It cost me a fortune, man. It cost me so much
Oh, I
money.
bet.
Oh
They're
my
heavy, aren't
God.
they?
Yeah, super heavy, and they got tied up in customs, so it's a whole. You have to get this permit, and then this person you need to speak to is long, but
How much do you think that
Jeez.
cost you to get them all shipped there?
it's gonna cost me like maybe just under 2K. So that's like a whole synth itself. I could have bought a synth with that money.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy.
You've got to do what you got to do though. Sometimes
Yep.
you
Yeah,
got to do
Of
it.
course, man.
If that's how, if you're moving about like that, it's part of it.
Yeah,
Innit?
100%.
I always wonder what
Well,
I'd do with my dog.
I keep thinking
Put
that
him
as
in
well.
storage.
She's just sleeping
I know, I
behind me.
I can't pour under the plane with all suitcases. That seems crazy. I've seen Toy
Yeah.
Story. I know what goes on. It's crazy down there.
But yeah, these days you're allowed to like buy a seat and then just put your dog on the seat right next to you, right? Like
Emotional
like a
support
normal-
dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, something
Select
like that. You can-
Airlines.
You can finesse it.
I think
Yeah.
Select
Finesse it.
Airlines. I think like some like
My
French
dog would
Airlines do.
just be a nightmare. It would be a nightmare.
What
Got a
dog do you
toy
have?
poodle that's about that big. She'd just be toy poodle, tiny thing.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
pathetic, but it's great. Yeah.
That's a cute dog.
No protection.
Barks a lot, but then when someone comes to the door, they're just your
Yeah,
best
I've got
friend.
to deal with it. Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's it,
Exactly.
man. So yeah,
What
what,
have you
yeah,
been
what-
working on recently anyway?
Oh yeah, constant stuff. Obviously, I can't remember exactly what was said when I last spoke to you, but a lot of sync stuff is like I'm sure everyone's hearing that word more and more as producers. Yeah, over
It
the last
seems
few
more
years.
popular
I
now.
keep constantly getting ads to people like selling sync courses and people.
Yeah, that's the thing now at the minute, which is
trying to-
interesting.
Yeah,
And it's a tricky one really because I've done it now since like 2017 is when I started doing this sync stuff. I'd had a few little kind of accidental syncs just through things along the way, nothing crazy. But once I realized it was a lane, and I got an opportunity with just an organic relationship that I'd already had that I didn't know worked in this space. So then we spoke and it was kind of really casual. And I was like, I'd like to try something like that. And it was a who you know type of thing, which is what a lot of it is, which is why I find these courses, and there is good information in these courses, but the answer isn't always quite there, because it's like the more people I meet that actually do it, do you know what I mean? Like are really doing it for a living and have been doing it for a living and things like that. It doesn't follow. It didn't come about through this rule book. Everyone's just trying to make it in music, but not make it. Do you know what I mean? Whatever that looks like to you.
Yeah.
And I think it's not like selling a beat course to people who are starting to learn to get into making beats or whatever. It's like you kind of got to. I can't see how someone could like be early in their development and get into it and be able to. There's so much nuance. Do you know what I mean? In writing for brief, for sync, for TV, it's a lot about dropping ego and preference sometimes, and you've got to have a certain taste and whatnot, and an ear. And I think my thing's in the sonics anyway. Like that's what I think. If you get the sonics right, well, with not even to I couldn't even name the producer anyway, but there's producers out there that make kind of beats that aren't technically that impressive or great, don't even sound that great sometimes, and yet they are parts of projects that do like millions and millions and millions, but it's a lot of the time because of the sonic and the feel, isn't it? So you've got to learn all that nuance before you can get into it. So I don't know. The course.
How did you get into it?
I kind of fell into it through just being, because I'm 34 now, so I'm no spring chicken, but I was making music since I was 13, so that's when I got into it. Bands and things, because it was back whenever, like 2003, which is just ridiculous. But anyway, I can't believe that. It's because I still feel like I'm there in my head. Do you know what I mean? So when you actually think about that, that's terrifying. But yeah, so I was in like bands and stuff, but I always like loved rap music and things. It was just a different time, and it felt like there was no way. I was just like in a northern town village, like it was accessible to get a guy to play some drums and whatever. It didn't feel in any way realistic to go down the rap route without looking. I feel it like way too self-conscious to, have been bold and actually do it myself, like at that point. So I did all that, and then it just evolved and learned more about production, ended up in that sort of space. And you just meet people, don't you? Just and if you're a good person, you make good connections with people, and it's just that kind of paying off. And the bad connections you don't really know because you don't speak to them again anyway. But there was one particular person who had a label, just a small label, that we put a project out, one of the many different projects I was trying to do to figure out this thing. And he turned out to have a good relation. He earned a lot of his money from sync licensing, but through music production libraries. Which, and I'm sure you know about this stuff, but I think the stat is 80% of the music that you just hear out in the world, just out and about, is actually not, or in media. So, the world's probably not quite right, but in the media space, 80% of that music is actually not commercially released music. It's music that exists in this like murky underworld of musicians actually making money. Do you know what I mean? Like from doing all kinds of music. There's things that work better than others, like, and that's not to say that a love song won't sync well, but songs about love are less like a love song. It's often too personal, and it's like it'll have a niche moment on maybe a movie, if that movie ever gets made. Do you know what I mean? Whereas a energetic sort of drill influenced orchestral thing with a vocal that has got talking about confidence and power and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like incorporating this type of terminology. So it was just a case of like learning through this connection about all that, and then things just, it's quite complicated. And this is kind of why the course thing is like, a course can teach you like the structure of how to make this kind of music and structure your tracks in a way that is going to be appealing to music supervisors and editors and things like that. Like you need edit points, you need like a build up section, a drop, a breakdown, another build, another sort of like drop, can be the same but more bells and whistles, and you need a downbeat, and it don't want to be too long, and all these little details that you don't really think about when you're just writing songs. You like, and a lot of people struggle to detach that. But to actually get into it. It's like everything. It's like you guys know. You just have to be doing it and making good connections, because you can obviously do the thing where you get a collection of songs and email it over, but that's not how it worked for me. It was just on relationships and a little bit, well, a lot of luck. There's always luck involved, I think. That's not to take away from the work anyone does, but there's always luck involved. There's always catching the algorithm at the right time, or you know, the right hashtag, the right day. I've definitely had things that have paid off massively by that alone, like posting on social media at the right time, just by chance, not aiming at a specific goal, but then something I never had thought happen come from the back of it, which then is the butterfly effect. And that's just kind of, I just think that's the reality of how it tends to work.
I've heard from people that have had sync placements as well that one of their strategies was to use like IMDb Pro, for example, and find like the music supervisor's emails and reach out to them in a specific way. So is that, I guess like a lot of people are trying that, but is that not something that's, I don't know, is the likeliness of you getting a sync placement by doing that method, is that quite slim, or is that still doable?
It's doable, because anything's doable. It can happen. Again, a good day where the person is just in the mood to check their emails, check their submissions.
Yeah,
like it's worth doing if you've like can be bothered to do it, but it's not necessarily. You need to go into it prepared, and like you can just go and send them beats, because you never know what people need. But you just when I'm like backtracking, I'm saying, oh, you can. It's because it's just minimizing the chances in the end. Do you know what I mean? So you can, but you want to know what you're submitting it for. So it's not just about finding music supervisors and emailing them. It's about catering to the types of work that they work on and making sure that you're sending them a catalogue that's not too big, that is on point for them. And then even then they might never see the email. I think a lot of it is about catalogue and about actually doing the work. And it is more work than just what is coming from a beat maker world. It's a lot more work than just making a beat and uploading it to like BeatStars or whatever, and doing a bit of that. Like,
sounds kind of similar to you know, if people were just going to find like a list of rappers' emails and they'll just buy a list off someone and send a bunch of beats to them.
Exactly.
It's like you might be sending a bunch of drill beats to a group of artists that just make Afro, or I guess, and then it's like, are they ever going to find that email anyway?
They say if something sounds too good to be true, it usually is, and that's what it is with a lot of that stuff. You know, like to just send a cold email. But some people really go in on it and like have a really persistent nature about them to really incorporate that into part of their structure. But I think for myself, like I just know I'm not that guy. Really, I'm not going to keep up with that. I'm not going to. It's just not the route. And if that means that I'm missing an opportunity, if that means I never get it, that's fate. I'm quite happy to accept that, like, because fate pays off in other ways. Like, I'm very big on sort of like, and maybe it's because I am getting older and I kind of having to look at things a bit different, like with kids and stuff. But you've got to figure out who you are a bit in anything that you're doing, and like you've like it's all right. Before I would feel like I was chasing music in a different way. I'm not going to sit here and try and mumble my way to explain that, because but I know it felt different. Whereas now, this is I've done it for that long that this is just the thing that I do. And like, you know, when you'll probably get it, where it's like an imposter syndrome, which can happen at any level. You know, I know it's not like I can't believe what's thingy, but like I've managed to build a real life for myself doing it somehow. And like you kind of feel, look, when someone comes and speaks to you about it, you're kind of like, oh yeah, but it's not that difficult. But it is actually when you're trying to sort of make the point, I guess, like doing something like this and forcing me to actually think about giving some valuable information. It's like, yeah, it is difficult, and it takes a lot of learning, and it takes a lot of time put in to be able to have the luxury of saying it's not difficult.
Yeah, 100%.
So
it feels like the longer you do something.
How does it usually? I was just going to ask, how does it usually work with the sync world then? So do you usually get sent a brief and then you make the music to the brief, or do you have a catalog of loads of different sounds, and when they give you the brief, you kind of look through your catalog and be like, okay, these couple ones sound good, let's give those away?
Yeah. Well, at this point, because I've been doing it for so long and I've had plenty of songs rejected, I've done plenty of briefs, like more than accepted get rejected, and that's another thing to like always bear in mind. Like, you're not going to land everything. Like, it's just not how it works. But the way I've framed that is I'm still building catalog, because if something gets rejected, it's not because it's bad music or it doesn't sound well right or it can't be perfect for something. And I've had the same company reject something, then 2 years later I've thought I'm going to submit the same thing for this different brief but the same song, submitted that and they took it. So it's the same, like the same company. Maybe it might have been a different group of people or whatever, but I just think you've got to always be building the catalogue, and the briefs come when they come, and some briefs require a really bespoke approach where they want a specific thing. I just done a McDonald's one where the whole thing was it's for this McSpicy burger thing, and they wanted, because the aesthetic was almost like the actor was playing like a YouTuber type character with who would be like a collector of something. She like collected McTasties or whatever. That's kind of the vibe. So she's like bigging up like a new pair of trainers or whatever. And they wanted like shopping channel type music that then drops into like some sort of, they weren't specific whether they wanted it to be like hip hop, drill, trap. They just like, something that falls in that space. So then I was working with a music supervisor who I've just again built a relationship with through landing syncs with them and blah blah blah. So now they kind of have a trust where we can do that. And we needed to license another piece of music from another library to get you'll have heard the piece of music that I talk about. Like, if you've grown up in Britain, it's like always been on adverts and stuff. And then, so I don't get back end on it because of that. That was part of the deal. So they get all the PRS every time it's played. They get all the PRS. I don't know if that's like something I should say, but I've said it now. And then, yeah. So that one is I'll not go over the whole thing. I'm boring myself, but it's specific. Do you know what I mean? They want this kind of thing. The chances of me having that on file, just like, I'm going to make a song out of that piece of shopping music. Do you know what I mean? Like, it would never have happened. So you get that stuff. Like another one, a Subway one, I had to remake that war song. What is it good for? And like make it a sort of like trap feel. And it's kind of at first you listen to it and you're like, what am I going to do with that? Like, but then what I love about the challenging briefs is it makes me pull up plugins I don't always use. It makes me pull up and like get better at scoring sometimes, because it's like we need strings and I'm like, I haven't used strings in a bit. I feel rusty, and then I get nervous and then I'm like, but I've got it. And you know what I mean? It's like it keeps me getting better, and every time I land something, I'm like, well, no one can say anything now because that's commercially broadcast quality. Like I should probably be putting mixing services out at this point, because I've got so many things micro placed and whatever that you just pick up all these skills. And as far as the briefs go, the briefs vary, man, and you should always be building catalog anyway. If you're trying to be proactive in doing this rather than just trying to like fall into it every now and then, you should be pulling together that stuff. Like me and a friend, another producer, have just finished like 12 tracks because we have a side project that we created called Neon Nights, which we made on the back of submitting a custom brief and getting it for Adidas. So then that was an Adidas thing. So we thought, we may as well put it out. And then we did another thing in a similar style and it got another placement. So we thought, let's make this sort of alias, just like a faceless thing for now. See, let it just be. And anytime we do something that isn't tied to a library or tied to anything that is our own, we can put it out through that. And we've just done 12 tracks with no opportunity lined up for them or anything. There's nothing, there's no reason to have done them other than having 12 tracks that are going to be available on Spotify and that looks and feels like a real artist, which it is in its own sense, but, shape it like that. Because sometimes people want to come in and use a real artist. Like, they specifically don't want to use library. They don't want to go the music bespoke sort of route. They want something that's like a real artist that's out. Like, you've got to think it's like non-uniform day for a lot of these companies when it's about talking about we get to do an advert. It's like when you watch The Apprentice. It's like the day they get to make the advert, you get, it's just jokes. As creative people, watching that is like my favorite shit. I'm like, I wish I was on this team. But but yeah, it's fun. It's kind of like silly, but there is money in it. This is the thing with like I still have all the aspirations for like the things that I got into music for. Like I'm working on projects that have got potential in the commercial thing and some pop stuff. I'm trying to still not just submit to this like advertising thing and just being like a Charlie Sheen from 2.5 Men. And yeah, like I
hear that.
Yeah, it's something like the conversation's got a lot louder. Like you say, you've been seeing a lot of ads and stuff.
Yeah, and honestly, like speaking to some people in music, there's a few times that I've come across where they've really tried to push me into it. Like I was speaking to a guy, I don't know if I meant to mention this, but I'm going to mention it anyway. He works for PRS, and he was telling me just like the guys who are actually making the big money are the guys who are not doing the commercial stuff. They're actually doing a lot of the songs that you're going to hear in TV shows, and they get a piece of that.
Yeah,
and I remember watching this documentary. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's called The Library, and it's basically all about library music, and it kind of breaks down like some of the biggest songs that. Okay, if you ask me what is this song called, I can't tell you what it's called. But as soon as you hear it, it's like, oh yeah, like the one that goes like something like that.
Yeah.
It's massive, but it was breaking down like some of how it was made, and then those guys seem like they're killing it. But as someone who sits on the outside, we hear like, it's big money, but like, is it big money? Like, what are we saying?
Yeah. Well, so what's interesting, because you're in the YouTube space as well as doing the music thing, but like, unless this is maybe I'm being ignorant to it, but that seems, from what I've seen of you guys and the come up, that seems to be where you've been able to get a control of your own life, like like the financial. I've flirted with YouTube. I love the idea of it, but I've just never committed to it like that. But it's one of those things. But I know the potential for money there is real, and the ownership. You can get to a point where you start getting free stuff, and it's just kind of like you get to live in a way that is probably better of a lifestyle than it would be if you were getting half the placements you think you want. But it's such a mind fuck, because you still want those placements, you still want to live like that, but it's like a lottery ticket win to get to the level where you're making so much money as a producer that like you're living a crazy lifestyle, and it's all doable. That's not to like be like a give up on anyone to give up on their dreams thing. Like, we've all still got it, but I think the more you progress through it, especially like when you find your own lane, like yous have to fund yourself, and like I feel like I have through the music library stuff. It's like it's not always cracked up to be on the other side, other than it looks really good for people that you meet and you're like, oh yeah, produce this for this big 100%. Artist. But a lot of them are getting screwed with money. But as far as the money to be made in sync licensing, there's so many different ways that people do it. Like some people won't work with libraries, and some people won't work with certain libraries because the deals look bad. Like, but my mindset is like Drake was in a terrible deal, for a long time, and you don't get to be the biggest artist in the world without that terrible deal. Like, you need that backing, which is going to cost you a lot. So it's a double-edged sword. It's like I kind of do anything I've got time for. I'm a bit more selective now, because early on I did like full albums for some smaller libraries that didn't pay anything up front, and not all do, and sometimes it's worth it. So I would definitely say you do the work for free up front as well, because if they don't pay an upfront fee, they just don't. And then it's down to you to make a decision if you're willing to do the work. But it's good if you can get ahead of yourself, which is why it should be something for you guys to consider. If someone gives you these opportunities, like the money can be real, especially if you get bespoke. Like, I've had, so let me think of numbers. There was one particular one which was crazy money. Like, to me as a person, like for my standards, like it was a collaboration track, and there was a publisher involved, and it was in the healthy, not. I don't want to say too much because the other guy involved, he don't like. I don't have a problem with saying the number, but the other guy, he's like,
you could give us like you could maybe just give us. It doesn't have to be the specific example, but maybe just like a figure on the lower end of it and a figure on the higher end. So you could be like, okay. Between this and that. So you don't have to say the specific ad.
I never mind with stuff like that. You kind of learn to be cagey with money, but I think the truth is more interesting than this not telling people, like, what's it matter? But like,
people want the juice, don't they?
Yeah, and it's like, but then I guess you've got to be a bit careful. But
of course.
So on PRS, it grew. Like, I would used to get, when I was just releasing bits and bobs of music with whoever, like whatever, I kind of got to a point where I was getting a few £100 every PRS, 200 quid, 200 quid, whatever. And then I think, fortunately, I hit the ground running because one of my very first submissions to this music library, which is Sky, actually. Sky owned this music library, SATV. It was just at a time where they were doing they remarketed from Sky Sports 1, Sky Sports 2, Sky Sports 3 to like Sky Sports Football, Sky Sports Tennis, whatever. So it was this huge thing, and they used one of our pieces of music, and it was like on the TV everywhere. So I was like getting all the pats on the back and from everyone, like, oh, I'm seeing that everywhere. But when the PRS came, bearing in mind, even though the deal's bad, like, it's not bad that they keep half of the publishing because that's normal. But certain parts of the splits people wouldn't necessarily always like. But they do pay a bit upfront or whatever, and some libraries do, some libraries don't, and it all compensates on the back end. But on publishing, generally, these production music libraries make their money on 50% of the publishing. So that's what they get, 50% on whatever comes in on PRS. That's like their part of the thing. And they're doing a lot of, the legwork in actually getting the placements on TV. So it's fully worth it.
The same with an artist anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a record label.
Yeah, it's totally worth it to me. Like that's fine. And then the rest is split amongst collaborators, and which I do a lot of. Like, I'll have any opportunity I get that I can work on and get the full fucking half, I'll try and do, because I've got mouths to feed and stuff. It's like, you've got to do that. But for the most part, there's room for collaboration. So it's like quite good to do it like that, especially when you've got a lot on your plate. If I've got a lot of stuff that I'm juggling, if I have other people that are keen to get involved, like doing half a track or like kickstarting the idea that I can then go and just almost robotically format for this world, then everyone kind of wins. And anyway, so I only had 11%, I think, in the end on this track on the publishing, which my workload was more than that, so I could have been mardy about it. But I've never moved like that. I just try and go with what's there, and not more about quantity in the sense of against quality, but like, I want that needs to be there, but I'm treating that as a given. It's not going to get accepted if the quality's not there. I still want to get sort of numbers on the board. Like, I think on my PRS I've got like over 600 tracks registered, but I don't really understand how. Like, I think some of them are duplicates, but when I look through, like, but I know that there's at least like a good 350 to 400 of those are like from doing this kind of work. So I've been doing it for a while, but it's a long game. It's not like it can be a little get micro rich quick thing. If you get one sync opportunity, one placement through one thing, you might get 60 grand. Do you know what I mean?
For one placement as an advance.
Just that's it. Yeah, that might be a licensing fee. So I've had tracks where it's the track already exists, so they're licensing the track. They're not gaining exclusivity of it. They're licensing that track. Right. So you don't always get the bigger fees on them, but you still get big fees, like the 10 grand just for doing nothing that day. And yeah,
solid, man.
Yeah, but then I've had things which are for big brands that you would think, oh, that one it'll have got paid a lot for because that's this brand, and it might have been 800 quid. Do you know what I mean? Because that was what the budget allowed for that particular thing. So, and I sort of don't say no to any of it. That's been my strategy. It's kind of been like, this opportunity is there right now. if I do a day's work and it's that and they don't take it, I've got another piece of catalog ready for the next thing. Or eventually you have so many bits like that because there's recurring trends and they come to me for certain vibes. So I end up...
if you license a track to a company for a sync placement, can you license it to another one, or does it depend on the deal?
It depends on the deal, and it depends on the circumstances. Like if I made something bespoke, they usually are going to buy that exclusivity. But like I say, like it's a funny story because
sorry to jump
how it
in.
worked out.
What do you mean by bespoke?
Oh, bespoke. So that's like custom for... If I get an email and they're like they want something bespoke, they're meaning they want something made for this. Okay, that doesn't mean that I can't use anything in my catalog as a starting point.
Yeah.
So I might send... The person that sends it to me isn't like Ronald McDonald. Do you know what I mean? It's like whoever is... There's like there's different stages of it, and it depends who you meet and where as to where you are. But generally speaking, it's like company, they hire an ad agency. Ad agency know they need music, so they hire a music supervision agency. Music supervision agency have pool of producers, and a lot of the times they're people who listen to a lot of music and have a lot of playlists, because it's not always looking for producers to make something custom. A lot of the times they're working on a full film that want to license Skepta and this and that. Like I worked on something, I had like one piece of incidental music in the background of a club on whatever, I should know, I'm terrible with names and stuff, but the new like Kiddlehood film, whichever they hood it was. But there was a little background, something going on in the club, and I had to make something for that. And that was like small fee, 500 quid or something, I think it was. But for me, it's like another credit, 500 quid for making a simple beat, another thing to add to the CV. I get to, it's a cool little thing to do. It's like adding to culture and things like that.
Yeah.
So kind of ticked enough boxes and stuff. Yeah, it's cool to do. It's like at once upon a time, I would have done that for free. Do you know what I mean? So so bespoke means custom for whatever they ask. But then there's licensing. Sometimes I'll just get a music search. Have you got anything like this? A lot of the times through the agencies that I work on the stuff more towards ads with, which is only a handful. Like I've not got this huge like catalog of. This is why I could never do one of these selling course things, because I don't believe that that's how it works. It's like you build relationships, and it's hard to cold. It's not to say you shouldn't reach out, but it's you've got to have something to show them. Do you know what I mean? An appeal. They're like you can't something that's going to get their attention, unless you just get lucky, and luck does play a role. So it's always worth it if you feel like it. But I derailed myself then.
Yeah, my bad. I kind of jumped in.
From bespoke tracks. No. I asked you about licenses as well, right? Because I was saying, did they like just license it from you? Then can you license that to other people? Or
yeah. It depends on the contract and the song. It's like the tracks I told you about before. These Neon Nights tracks. They're all very much in that space. So like because no one's bought exclusivity to any of those tracks, or they've not been. One of them was made kind of bespoke, but they don't know that. They just sent a playlist of references, and we were like, "Oh, we can make something like that. Let's work on something like that." And then that's how that worked. So then we, those tracks aren't like in a library. They're not in anything. They're just on our DistroKid, and we both have the same admin publisher who we assign whatever tracks to them that we sort of like choose. To be able to keep the freedom, so that because you don't want to assign exclusivity to someone unless they're giving you a big advance. But even then, like I've learned through sync, and again you might feel it with the YouTube stuff, but like it would have to be a big advance at this point, because now they're competing. Like I know that I can get the fees that I can get through just being Jamie from Doncaster trying to work and do stuff on the internet. Do you know what I mean? Like to match like a 3-year exclusivity deal for like 200 grand on, like a lot of people will be like 200 grand, and I would have definitely been at some point, but you don't get it all at once. Tax, it's not 200 grand. It chips away. You've got to make it back then before you make anything else. You can't work with any other companies without them taking their cut. you lose a lot of control. Do you know what I mean? I think it's different if you're getting loads of placements in music that over there. Do you know what I mean? But
so are you talking about if that was a deal where you'd be exclusive to that company, where you can only make tracks for that company? Or did you mean
I
for
was
that
talking more so
specific
about
song?
on the publishing side. That
Okay.
like I try and avoid, unless the moment really calls for it, unless they could promise opportunities, like, and that are really, like, really good ones that I would, even if it's just that I would enjoy, even if I would make less money but I would enjoy it, could be enough. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, you can license multiple things. Like, well, it's if the track already exists, you've got to think, like, how many times you see Kanye Black Skinhead licensed everywhere? That's always on different stuff. So yeah, it's the same applies to other people's music as well. It's not always just like the big artists. Like it depends how you set up, and like I say, you can do it in multiple ways. You can offer a service as a composer that writes bespoke work for specific things, but to be able to say this is what I do, you've got to be able to say, because this is what I've done. Do you know what I mean? So that's a spot I've been at for a bit, but I'm slack with it. It annoys me about myself, but I need to, like, frame that up properly, because the portfolio looks great now. Like, it's all big brands. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I'm at a point now where I need to figure out how to push that side of myself outward, just to get more. But before even thinking about selling yourself as I make bespoke music, I feel like you need to learn, and library music taught me it. That's the best sort of entry point to aim for. But it's not just like, oh, everyone's welcome. It's still, you've got to maybe make a decision. Like, for example, there's a lot of, you see drill everywhere now, won't you? For example, like, drill's all over advertising, all over TV and stuff like that. It's high energy. You might have to make drill slightly different to how you've always made drill. Like, you might need to incorporate like a 16-bar breakdown that's maybe got some cinematic elements to give it just something that makes it more suited to the screen, or to a fitness video. Do you know what I mean? It don't have to be a movie. It's like the spectrum is broad now, and it's just preparing that. Maybe you might not need to do 10, but like a collection of those that are specifically made for that. Maybe get guest vocalists on and build it. I'm still building that world of people who are willing to do like that kind of vocal, where it's kind of like, it's not telling your story. It's not necessarily the most, like, street cred wise always going to be the one, but there's a way to do it in a way that's cool. And I think we are in a different space as well, where people actually now, sort of state of the world and the state of money and the state of people struggling, anyone rates anyone doing a hustle and making their money out of it. If you can, I feel like the attitude has changed on it. It's not like a sellout thing, because no one's got the luxury of that. Oh, you sold out. It's like, no. I'm trying to live a happy life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you as well, because you mentioned, the more credits you have, the more credible you are, and the more you can advertise your services.
Yeah.
Like being someone who's bespoke. But what are some other ways that you can increase your chances of landing a placement? Is it purely just a numbers game and you have to just keep submitting, or would you say you need to sign to a specific library? Or,
well, there's definitely, like, so Universal Music, that we all know, they're like the biggest label. They own the market share of kind of music, don't they? They own like the majority of like labels and whatnot. And I'm talking a little bit ignorantly there. I could be getting some of that. I just know that they like have got a lot of the stronghold on ownership and stuff. And the same, there's their website, Universal Production Music. That's somewhere that, if you were curious about it, to go and look, because there's just a good platform to look around at what music they've got there. And that is, once you go on there and you start searching around, that's the production music world. So you can go and like just look at it. It's not like hidden. It's just not really always been the loudest thing in a conversation, but you can go and do your research that way and hear like where you can fit into that, for one, and give yourself like a taste of like the scope and the quality that you're competing with and stuff, because it might surprise you as well. Like, you might be like, oh, I could do this all day, and there's other things in there that you might have a secret little thing where you really would love an excuse to do a house album or a cinematic album. You might just have this thing in you where secretly, like you won't, not secretly, but like you've got this little underlying thing. And there's opportunities. I make indie music still. I've like vocaled. I've like made punk music and vocaled it. Like, and I don't show anyone, and I don't like, you know, it's like crazy. It's like character acting almost in this room on my own. It's like, if I could be a fly on the wall, it would make me die. Do you know what I mean? It'd be horrible. But it's how willing you are to like bend and be creative with it. And there's always going to be that first bit where you've got to put a bit of work in and get a collection of music that you can listen to and be like, this works along the stuff that I'm comparing, not so much to Spotify songs, even though a lot of the stuff goes on Spotify now, but that's a different part of it. But stuff that you know exists in this library world, because the library thing can be a little bit of a slow start, which puts a lot of people off. Like I say, I think I got lucky because when I got that Sky rebrand thing, my 11%, I saw my PRS go to like $2,500. And I was like, oh, so that means this made however much. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm terrible at maths, but I started like doing the half-hearted maths in my head, and I was like, it's somewhere up there that if I had all of that, that would have been nice. And the mechanical side, which is the other side, there's a pot of money that comes with that, which you sell a lot of. When they give you this advance, they're actually buyouts of a portion of your rights, like a label. But it's still worth it because I still got $2,500 more, which I'd not got before. Do you know what I mean? So I just never stopped. And doing it with them, and then the more I did with them and just jumped on that opportunity. And anytime I got a brief through, I'd try it. And if it was an indie brief, and I would like reach out to people who I like knew, because you get to know people when you're doing music. You might know a person who was in a band 10 years ago that never made it in his band, but he was pretty good. You know, you could just hit him up and just be like, not spoken. That's what it was. It was like an old, young, like tutor from my college years. And he was like a young tutor. So he was kind of doing a lesson because he was still a student going into that. And we've now worked together all the time. We both make our full, like, aside from Bespoke, any custom work or licenses direct that are sometimes, you know, big. And I'll get back. I'll give you some numbers on that. I didn't really answer that one. But like, I'm living off my PRS now, and like I say, I've got a mortgage. I built a studio in my garden from scratch. I've got 2 kids. I think I can. My PRS is my own thingy, but I made like close to $50,000 off PRS last year, just on
PRS alone, not including
PRS alone,
advances or anything.
Yeah. And the year before about the same, and some of that is and the year before a bit less, and the year before a fair bit less, but still, like, so 4 years ago is when I started to hit a point where I was making bits of money from just accumulative, when you get your royalty statements from all the little releases that were always bonuses, but they're never enough to like fully live off. I started to see this new influx. You know what I mean? Like, once I started hitting the 20,000 in that year, I was like, 20,000 I got off that. That's all right. I can live off that in a 2-house thing. I was before the kids and before some certain things, so that was different. It would be a bit of a struggle now, but yeah, that's just my PRS. So I aim to live like all I've got is my PRS, even though in the back of my head I had to set up a limited company because some of the sync licensing fees that we got, there was a flurry that was crazy, like that set all this up, and like I was like, I have to buy a new house this year because next year on the books I won't be able to look like I can buy that house. Do you know what I mean? Because it goes on what you made. Like, like it looked like a growing thing. This year I made less on the paper than that year because I hadn't set up a limited company, and literally, like, there was this one. It was a 15-second, the smallest, most crazy little piece of music I've ever made. I was in LA when we made it. We got the brief. I just happened to be there. Visiting my friend who lives out there, who I work a lot with. I keep talking about one of, and we got a brief through in the morning. We were like, oh, let's just start the day there with this. It's 15 seconds, and it was like just a silly little thing. We were like boom ba dum ba dum on microphone and like some trap drums and 808s, just messing about, really, sampling dog barks and stuff because it was for a pet food brand. It was just before the pandemic. Yeah. So, and I can send you the link to it so you can see it. And it's so that then the pandemic kind of hit shortly after, and it delayed everything, delayed. But this was like the favorite track that they were going to go for, and then I think it was in the August, October of 2020, when people started trying to get their businesses back and all that kind of stuff. They was like, yeah, we'll confirm it. And the first license for that was for 3 months US TV, which doesn't pay royalties on the back end, which is a detail I don't fully get, but advertising in America doesn't pay back end on the music, so the fees are better. So it was like between me, the guy, and the publisher at the time, it was like 30 grand. So I was like, shit, that's a lot. Which was great. Worked out whatever. I got in the end about 8.5 grand or whatever by after time splits and whatnot. But then by that Christmas, they relicensed again. They wanted it for the year, and that was a mad one. That was like 6 figures, and then
damn.
Yeah,
wow.
and
Just
then
the license for 1 year. So they'd have to relicense every year if they wanted to continue.
Well, then they did relicense. The next Christmas came round. They was like,
shit.
relicense again for a bit more. And that was like, so we'd made this track 2 years ago.
Wow.
So that was like the golden, that was like the moment kind of where it was like, that was one of those for me anyway, that was one of those life moments where it's like, I've got to consolidate with this moment because it's rare. So that is rare. And I will get briefs in for like, every now and then it's like, big fee on this one, 150 grand, or big fee on this one, 250 grand. And you're like, all right, I may as well do it. But do you know what I mean? It's like, it feels unrealistic, but it's not unrealistic because we got that one was crazy. That one was like, that's what allowed me to do all of this kind of stuff. But then I've done stuff
like that Drake placement.
yeah, exactly. Like, exactly. But then even that, you don't get the money you would make off that Drake placement will filter in over time, so you never feel like there you go, there's a big like you've won postcode lottery kind of thing. It's not like winning the lottery, but it's like winning like something.
Well, you'll get the advance, but you don't get that advance every year like the sync placement.
Well, that's it, and that's true. And some stuff will pay a back end, and it all adds to credentials. And that was like I say, it was a good flurry. I've still definitely. You're kind of moving with the current as well of what's happening in the world as well. Like people's budgets for a minute, people went easier on budgets, I think, over the last year, but then they're opening up more and I'm feeling that more as well. So it kind of goes like that. But library music is just a constant thing keeping me sharp. Like if I've got no custom briefs coming in, as much as it gets in your head after a bit, you're like, I haven't had any one of them kind of briefs for a bit. But then as long as you're chipping away at the other side of your catalogue, you're just refilling the pot. At this point, I'm like ahead of myself. So that work that I did for the first 2.5 years, where I got that early win, which made me know that there really is money in it, and it's not just some pretend thing that people say you can make money in. Do you know what I mean? Like I knew, so that confirmed that. And then my next PRS after that first 2.5 grand one, it was like 350. So I was like, okay, this is not nailed on yet. But then over the years, I've taken people who've like been curious when I've had them in the studio, because I'm quite happy to show them, because what are we lying for? Like, I'll just show you so that I don't want you to think I'm bullshit. I'm just showing you it's like a real thing. Like you would see it like starts to fluctuate up. And then I remember the day my daughter was born, I had 5 grand saved, and I'm like, having a kid, got 5 grand. That feels like nothing can go wrong. And then, but then that day she was like born, funnily enough, story of my life, on fucking PRS day. And I checked my thing, and it was like another 5. That was my first 5 grand. That was like that first time I hit that milestone. So I'm like, doubled up. I've doubled up. I'm extra saved now. Yeah. So and you know, like by the time my son was born, it was at a different level. So it was like, it's strange. It's really strange having to like say this out loud and think about it back, because there's just such like milestone moments and little exciting moments on the way. But it's really there, and it's like anything. It's like persistence, just like what you guys do. Do you know what I mean? Like it's you feel, and I've tasted a little bit of that, like, because I was taking my Instagram seriously at one point. Like I was really trying to hit it hard. Like I had all this stuff happen where I went over and worked with Timbaland, and like he found, like he hit me up on.
I remember you telling me the story last time for that.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was so surreal, such a surreal like little moment. Just a weird self-affirming thing, but it was just by chance. It was never a goal, never a target. None of it was. That's the thing. Like that's not to say you shouldn't set goals, but it's accepting like there's a level of randomness to all of this, and like showing up and doing the work is a big part of it, and you will expose yourself to yourself and to other people as to what you actually are in that space. And I think you see it time and time again with people on YouTube's quite a good place because you can see it so much. You know what I mean? You see people do channels that grow and then some that don't because they're trying to copy a formula, then and it kind of hits a point, but then people flourish in their own kind of way. Like, I'm terrible with names, so I can't reference, but there's so many different like pockets on YouTube where people have found their own lane. And I think there's a parallel in doing the sync licensing stuff because it like there's a self-sufficiency to it.
Yeah.
So like if you want to put a project out, you can probably like pull together some sort of budget to help yourself, and you know what I mean. Like it's not out of reach. It's not like a waste of money. Like you're in a position where this is your part of your income, at least. Do you know what I mean? So it's a business write-off as well. Like there's all these different things that come into play. Like every time I buy a synth, it's like, well, I won't have to pay the VAT and I won't have to pay the tax on it, and it's like you start to like be able to invest in yourself with business sort of intelligence in mind. Not that I'm the most intelligent with business, but it's good though, man. It's a lane that is opening up to a lot of the conversation.
I'm just thinking, just for people that are like listening and want to know like exactly how a deal works. So would I be right in saying like company needs a track for an ad or whatever?
Yeah.
They'll either want something bespoke or they'll just have like some criteria that fits the vibe. And then if you were the example, they'd either want that exclusively or to just license that non-exclusively.
Yeah.
They'd pay in advance, and then you'd also get a percentage of PRS as well.
Yeah.
A percentage of publishing, basically. So that's how a typical deal works.
Yeah, more or less. It's like they'll come in. Sometimes it's a work for hire, where it's basically just do it. You don't get to keep it. We pay you this one-off fee. Right. Even in a work for hire, sometimes you can get on the back end. There is like wiggle room in those bits. It depends where it's going to go and for what reason. And like online placements, there's not really much back end to think about. It's broadcast, like radio, even radio, which is crazy because you feel like.
What about the master recording side? How does that work?
There's money on that side, but usually, so for the most part, that is taken care of. It's all just comes as part of the fee, and it's split.
Right.
Depending on if the songs are signed with a label, so like if I work with one label called Energy Music, who are like a sub-label on Universal, and they don't pay upfront fees, but I do a lot of work for them because it's with Universal. Universal, I know, are one of the biggest, like most consistent in placing stuff.
Yeah.
And because I'm in a situation where other work I've done has allowed me to have the time to do that work for free, thinking of catching up, it's one of those. So it depends if that stuff works for you. But I think stuff like that, you know, no matter how many different things have worked out for me, I don't not do the free work still. Do you know what I mean? Like,
of course.
You can't lose that and start thinking, well, now I know the price has gone up. It's like, well, only if they're fucking willing to pay the price, mate. Otherwise, no one gets paid. Like someone else gets paid or whatever. Like, it's just a shit mentality, I think. Like, I feel like it would hold me back. If you wanted to be as independent, if you start bringing other people in, then yeah. But the fee, there's a mechanical side and a publishing side. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a like super genius on that stuff. That's the value in these agencies in between, or the sync, production music libraries, is they take care of that stuff if you're willing to trust them and whatnot, and they bring a lot of the opportunity to the bag, and they know what they're doing. And I kind of like having that security of someone's going to take care of that, and it's all going to be all right. But the one I work with a lot, they don't pay up front, but we keep, like, I think it's all or almost all of the mechanical side, which other ones they pay decent up front, depending on your level of decent, like £500 per track. To me, that's decent. And just it bides you over, but then they'll keep maybe all the mechanical, so you don't ever see any of that. So then people can look at that and go, that's a bad deal. But then it's like, but I know that this company place a lot. Like they always are like the top of my PRS. Again, like my highest paying thing in my last PRS for one track, for probably maybe 20% after all the different splits are taken in, because I give someone, if someone's in there and they're middleman in it and they're asking for a small cut, I just give them the cut because they're doing something I'm not doing. So even if I could grumble at it, like, there'll be the right time to make things work differently for me. Do you know what I mean? At the minute, I'm just so focused on doing so much of it that, like, I'm almost like I've got a guaranteed trickle down for 5 years so that I can slow down and build my own thing that can leverage the next thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm still, even though it's in a healthy place, and maybe arguably I could do that now, I'm still hungry for it. So I'm not burnt out yet. So I'm just figure, let's just keep doing that. I'm enjoying it. I've got, like I say, I've got the young kids, and while they're at this age, that's like life kicks in a little bit, and you're just like, it's not all about music, it's not all about money, and
have you ever
trying to get that balance right and utilize the gift.
Sorry, man. Yeah, I was just going to ask. Have you ever hit a point, kind of like maybe in the early stages of the process, where maybe it wasn't working as quickly as you thought, or has the whole thing kind of been more like linear, or has it been like parts where you're like, fuck, I don't know if I can do this, or it's not working out how I thought it would?
I would say that it was a little, naturally at the beginning, I feel like it was a little bit more like, I don't know. But I was fortunate in getting that early, quite big win, even though I only got like $2,500 off it, which is still good money or whatever. At the time, especially, I was happy. But I saw how much must have been made from that placement.
Yeah.
And then I was in a place where I'd just kind of changed my situation. I was working on a project before, just like a more passion project, trying to make it work. You know, like this classic thing that I'm sure we've all done, like collaborations with another producer, working with this artist, trying to pop this artist, and all that stuff. And that had kind of like ran its course, and we had some moments, but we just grew to sort of be doing each other's head in, and there just had to be a change. My life, I wanted to kind of move on in life a bit, but not stop the music, and it was a change of dynamic. So at that time, I was uploading beats to try and sell on BeatStars. I was trying a few little bits. I was thinking, do I need to now lock in and try and do a YouTube, because I've always done video work, so I know I've got that skill set as well. So I was in a place where it was all going on like that in my head anyway.
Yeah. So
it's hard to know specifically. I just put my head down and I just didn't say no. I was just like, any opportunity I got. I didn't think, I'll get my lawyer to check everything. I just didn't enter that space. I just thought, let me feel it first. Let me get like into a flow of this. See if I see what doing this for a year changes. And I saw enough change to think, well, if I do more like that, then that'll keep increasing. And I needed to see how the fluctuations were going to be to know if it was sustainable.
Yeah,
and it does fluctuate. Like I say, like I've had, because PRS pays every quarter, I've had in the same year like and bearing in mind this is like, I'm pursuing this full time, so the numbers are high but not high, because this is like full time. Forgetting the bespoke Frad stuff, because that is there as well, but presuming you're just doing this for now, it was like $3,500, which normally would have been good, but when in this stage of my life, it's like I've kind of got to have more than that to sustain the whole thing for 3 months. Do you know what I mean? Like, until my next statement. But then in that same year, there was one statement was $23,000, which was a shock. That's the highest by far ever. But I've still got most of that $23,000. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's still in my offset mortgage account. Like, boring middle-aged stuff starting to kick in. But like, it's about knowing that the next one could be $3,500. Probably won't be. It's not something I see as often now. They tend to be higher now, but not higher like that. They're still not always over 10 grand. Still always sometimes, just a bit after 5, whatever. It does vary. And if I get $5,500, I've got to think, right, that's 3 months mortgage. I've moved that out of the way. That's this amount of tax, this amount of tax. And then you realise what you're left with.
Chunk of money that's not going to be...
I have to do that.
Yeah.
I have to do it. It's the only way I can work, because I would rather get up, stretch my arms, and just make some eggs, answer to no one, look at my phone, who's ringing, I'll decide. Do you know what I mean? even though I'm just living in a town in the north of England, if I'm one day going to be a super rich guy, that'll happen if it's meant to happen. Like, I'm not really aiming at that. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's, and I've kind of like got this little underlying hope that like that approach might land me there somehow. Like, it might resonate with someone somewhere. Like, I actually quite like being older now as well. Like, I feel like that's a thing, is like having, like I said before, it's like you've got to put the time in, whether that's the 10,000 hours. Some people are just gifted and it comes quicker and they get it sooner or whatever. But you've got to put the time in to really be in this kind of spot. You can't, and it can happen by accident, but that tends to happen when it's not by accident, but like, you know, when people just have this skyrocket to fame or skyrocket to like wealth. That's can't be what you hope for. Even those people didn't really know that was going to happen like that. Sometimes they'll claim they do, and maybe they did. Maybe they had been. Maybe that there is something to that. Maybe, but I think a lot of the time, the wind gets under the thing, and it's like, it's gone. Do you know what I mean? So
the sooner it happens, the more for those people.
I was just going to ask.
People don't hang around for very long because it's overwhelming. It's like a one-hit wonder. They're not mentally ready for it. They've got no foundation. It's just goes up and then straight back down again. Whereas someone like yourself who's put 10, 11 plus years in, or not, no, since you were 11, sorry. It's, you know, you've got all those years. You've got all that foundation underneath.
Yeah, and it's like a long time. It's not like the norm now, I don't think. I guess it might be because I'm older, and a lot of the people doing a lot of this stuff are younger than me. So they're not going to have had that time. And people are starting young now. So these kids that have like jumped on FL at like 13, 12, younger, by the time they're at my age, the world's going mad, so God knows. But like the people who stick at it until they're my age and never have their big break, never thingy, but by the time they get to my age, if they don't stop, they will have found a way to make something happen with it.
I just feel like they should start. People that are, let's say, not just brand new to production, but people that like have the skill set, but they want to start tapping into the sync world, like now today, because obviously it might be a bit different to when you first started. But like if you had no sync placements right now, or if you were gonna teach someone how to get sync placements, where would they start?
If my advice to anyone who was like speaking to me seriously, like I'm gonna, you know, I've got support, I've saved up $5,000 to live for the next 6 months or however long I live at home, blah blah blah, whatever it might be, the setup, I'm going to put some time into this. Where do I start? My thing would be is plan yourself an album of a sound, of a style, by analyzing some stuff. Go search out if you want to turn making drill music into the foundation starting point of going and doing this. Then go and watch all the JD Sport adverts. Go watch all the Super Bowl adverts. Go watch all stuff like that. Just consume stuff like that, like Adidas content. You know, even content. Snapchat, Adidas, Snapchat content. Look at what that space that culturally taps in with this stuff. Obviously, you know, there's no reason why a nail salon can't use a drill beat, but you're going to be looking for longer. Like, you may as well go to the obvious places. And like analyze the music a bit, and you know, there's a talent involved, like in that, like they've always said, talent is only a percentage. There's being able to reference well without copying, without just ripping off, but like understanding why this reference is relevant to what I'm going to do. There's an art to that, and some people might not have that ear as well. So then that's kind of destiny saying it's not for you or whatever. Like there's always that. But and going on like Universal Production Music website, KPM, search out some music libraries that are well performing ones. They're not particularly hard to find. That's two there. If you go search KPM and go search Universal Production Music on their site and like type drill or whatever, listen to like the level that is set, listen to how many have vocals, go look through they've got like inspiration playlists because you've got to think the people that are going there are like editors or music supervisors looking for stuff for adverts. So they will go for sports music, or like you've got to have that intelligence to be like, I know I'm doing drill, I know that works more in like maybe urban drama, this. Go find your categories, go watch it, and listen to it and analyze it, and then like you can't copyright a structure as in intro, verse, how long stuff is. So just copy that just to get yourself going. Like eventually it'll be second nature and you make your own decisions. But initially, sit with a pad and pen, count the bars and be like, right, 8 bars, then it kicked in. Literally do that, map it out, and because it's not, you're not being forced creatively to express yourself and stand out as this new groundbreaking artist. You don't need to think about that. You can make 10 tracks with that same structure. It doesn't matter. You can make 10 tracks with that, almost that same drum kit if you get the sound selection right. I mean, it's good to switch it up a bit, obviously, but just for a bit of variation. But at the same time, a solid core like that for an album is also good. Like if there's recurring sounds and stuff, and go look at how these things are put together and then do it, because you can't just email someone saying, oh, I can make beats, here's my beat stars, here's my thing. You know, like you can use the other stuff you build in. If you have got a YouTube channel and you do sell beats and you have got some placements, when you do eventually present yourself, it's probably a good idea to present that side of yourself as well, because it makes you look like a well-rounded, all the subliminal stuff that it kind of says to someone. It's like, oh, this person does stuff and like is willing to put the work in. So it's always worth showing them. But if you haven't got either examples of other sync work that you've done, or like to just hit them up, say, hi, I'm a producer, I'd love to work on an album for you. That's not enough, I don't think. Maybe it is. I've never gone this route. So this is the problem when I have to give people advice when they do come and ask me. But I think the starting point would be to get some of the music together to prove even to yourself that you can actually make that kind of music and do it like that. Because there's a different nuance to it, and some different decisions that feel like breaking the rules to what you might cater to with the stuff that you make normally. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What do you think of those companies where you can upload your catalog to? Because I've seen a few of those lying around where you can sign up. Maybe you have to pay annually or something. You upload your catalog there, and they're supposed to shut your music about, aren't they?
Is it? It's Artlist.
Yeah, I can't remember the company names, but
yeah, the ones that seem a bit more. It's like, don't look like a label so much. It looks like a marketplace, self-sufficient almost.
Yeah, exactly. It looks
I've
like you
actually
upload
never
your music,
them.
They just find it.
I've never used them. I've licensed from them for bits of video work I've done for people, but and it all is quite seamless. And every time I've ever been on them, I'm like, maybe I should pull something together and try this. And I probably should actually do that. But I've never done it. But what do I think of it? I think if it's like, if there's nothing dodgy going on, I think it's great. And it's like, if it is as simple as just getting the music right, getting it to them, and uploading it, I don't know how the back end of that works. I don't know how the relationship side of it is. It's like a distributor. Anyone can work with a distributor. Anyone can sign up to like Centric and they take care of their publishing. But if I know people who are like sign up with Centric but have got some traction, so therefore they have a relationship with people at Centric. Do you know what I mean? Like, like it might work like that. Like if you upload and they particularly like it, you might be able to get more in with them. And it's a bit of a who you know thing, like every industry and life, you know.
Yeah.
Like you need to know a good butcher if you want good meat, and it's like it's like a bad thing, but it's not. People buy off people, and it's not always buying as in exchanging money. It's like buying into, and like you know, it's like and the law of attraction and the law of whatever the opposite of attraction is, I don't even know the word, but like the war of like repelling, you know what I mean? Like sometimes people who could help you are still not the right people to work with. Like there's a lot of people that can help you. Do you know what I mean? Like I think all that, the more you can find your way of being like transparent, I feel like that's the thing that's helped me a lot, is transparency. Because I think it's actually refreshing a lot of the time. And I think that's the benefit of being transparent, even if it means you overexpose certain things sometimes. Like it seemed like talking about the money, for example, and giving you examples with that. Like some people wouldn't want to say that because they will want you to think they're richer than they are, or they won't want you to know, and things like that. And I do get that approach, but I just I'm a bit of like a piss taker anyway. Like it's in my, I've grown up in like that environment, so it's hard to. I wouldn't be able to take myself serious trying to play this certain kind of role. Do you know what I mean? So I've just decided to just sort of embrace that part of myself and let that either push some people away or attract some other people to it. And I think transparency is well received because you're not trying to hide anything then.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you sharing the figures, man. Because like I said, not everyone's down to do that. And people are just
I don't mind giving you guys exacts.
Like
if you did want to know, like I can give you. I wouldn't want to say too. I wouldn't want to put other people's business on the internet, but
I think people just want to know like how much they could make if they started it. It's like I don't know, like what's the potential?
Well, the potential is like I say, I'm living. Fair enough. I'm not in London. I'm not in a major city. I'm like in a cheaper place to live. But like I say, the last few years has been like between 45, 50 grand basically on PRS alone. That's mainly from production music. Some of the stuff added to that is back end from some adverts that I got on TV. But that was only like topping it up. Like without them, I maybe would have made 10 grand less. And it's not like life-changing money, but I'm still adding to the list. And I could have a worse year next year than that last year. And I'm aware of that. That's why I'm careful with my money. And then I could have a better year than ever the year after that. So,
but to get that PRS like to that amount, like if you're going to do that with artist placements, that would take some big fucking placements, man. Like that would take a huge catalog.
It would. And a lot of radio play, a lot of publicity. It would take a lot. And I don't not do placements with artists, like up and coming artists. I've worked with, there's a singer called ADMT who has popped off on TikTok and stuff like that.
Kevin Gates, right? K Coke.
Yeah, I did a track with Kevin Gates. I've done work with Kevin K Coke. Pro Green. I'm like back and forth with him. I went and did sessions with him. I've got tracks vocaled and stuff with artists that you would know, and whether or not they come out, God knows, you know what I mean? So, and it's one of them. They've been sitting around for a bit, so maybe not. But I haven't gone, this is it now. I have put a lot of time into it, but for me, it depends how I like simple beats. Like in general, like I'm not really the guy I used to be. I used to overproduce, which sounds negative, you know, if that's your thing, that's your thing. But I used to kind of, it's not overproduce if you're doing it on purpose, but like I used to overproduce, maybe compensate, think, I need to do more to be good and feel like I'm good or whatever. Whereas now it's kind of like some of the wins I got, and even like the Timbaland moment was so self-assuring because all I was doing was making, if I'm honest with myself, like as well as wanting to make beats, but it got to a point where I was just making a beat to provide content. It wasn't to make the beat. It was to upload the content to feed what I was trying to build there. But then one of those beats was a 20-minute beat that, you know, I maybe had a Little Baby in mind, or like when I'm a Little Baby type beat. And I was just like, what can I do? I play the guitar a bit just through being in bands. I'm not like amazing or anything. So I did my little video, 25 minutes or whatever, because I didn't have long enough on my camera to record longer. So I knew I had to be quick and efficient with it, and all these sort of non-creative decisions going into it, that ended up being the one that landed with Kevin Gates. So it's just like, nice. And it's just like, you're just an antenna really. And like the Timbaland stuff, a big thing I learned with that was he'd like followed me and started liking up all my videos and that, and like talking on DMs a bit. So I was like, shit, this is actually Tim. I can't believe it. But then, so I was like, I just went in, I just thought I just need to keep feeding this Instagram thing just so that, and like working out who his people are and trying to make something of this somehow. Do you know what I mean? I didn't know how. And then there was one video I remember I had a meeting at the bank, and I rushed this video. I watched it back. I've rushed the edit. I've rushed it. And I watched it back and I thought, I don't mean fucking like this. This is shit. I thought, and I nearly didn't post it. And I thought, well, I've done it now. I'm not going to love everything. I don't love everything anyway, so I'll just post it and whatever. It's just showing consistent. I kind of made an excuse for myself to post it. And then in the middle of being at the bank meeting, I had to like pause the bank meeting because Timbaland's blowing up my phone saying, send me this now, I'm going to post it on my page. So I'm like,
damn,
whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, from now on, I'm just going to allow myself the luxury of saying I've been doing this for ages. I think I'm just always going to hit a certain quality. Some mixes I'm going to listen back to and be like, oh, what was I thinking there? But I think that about some songs that I hear on Spotify as well. And it's kind of like, you know what I mean? Like I sometimes listen to stuff, I think, I can't believe this, how shit this sounds. You know what I mean? Like, but I love the tune and it's not making me question it. It's only when, next time you listen to Eminem, Stan, listen to how loud the scribbles are, man.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Scribbles of that pen. when you tap into that, the song changes forever.
Now that you've said that,
now you've told me
listen
that.
to that the same.
Sorry.
I'm not going to
heard
unhear
it
it.
straight away.
Yeah, I've ruined that song for a lot of people. Yeah, it's like, it's louder than the vocal, louder than the snare. Crazy. But it's mad. It kind of goes to show, I don't know. And it obviously is done on purpose. With
Man,
that
we hear
one,
that
but
story so many times though, of people not about to post something and then they release it and then something magical happens with that. It's crazy.
Yeah, it seems to just be like in different forms. The general pattern is it's always like, it's like the pet food advert. We kind of made that on a whim, was silly with it. It was like, it's a long shot, it's a lot of money for 15 seconds. Surely we're not going to get that. And then that ends up being the thing that has the most life-changing effect on me financially. And I was there not to do that. I wasn't in LA to do that. I wasn't, I was, it's accepting some of the randomness that comes with just showing up. Do you know what I mean? Like if I don't have a busy week, I'm still in this room most of the day, treating it like a job. Some days I sit here with the TV on, loading sounds up and saying, why can I only play that chord? Like today, like, why do I keep going back to that chord? I've used that chord on so many things. And listening to music and just being like negative with myself, like, rap shit's dead, everything sounds shit. Do you know what I mean? I'm not even inspired by what I'm listening to, but then the next day you come listen to the same song and you're inspired by the same thing you get the day before. You get, do you know what I mean? It's like,
it's a real emotional roller coaster for producers, man. I think we all go through those highs and lows.
It is. So the biggest advice for doing any of it, I would say, is to turn up and do it and make some decisions. If you're at a point where you want to get into the sync licensing thing, there's so much other than making good music that is involved. It's like, you've got to get the structure, you've got to know how to conduct yourself a bit. No one wants to work with difficult people. Like, I've had people where I've collaborated, I'm not saying I've brought them in like, oh, I'm Jesus, but like I've given them, a chance to come work on this, and they've been into it, so I've wanted to help. It's all gone sort of well. They maybe give me a few eyebrow raised moments where I think, oh, these could be a problem at the end. And then at the end, it's like they start having problems with splits, or there's something in the contract. And it's like I said from the start that these contracts, because they're not really like, they're like quite set menu contracts. It's not like you're wasting your time getting lawyers involved at last minute. Like, it's not that game. It's like, understand what you're going into. Know that it's a bit of a numbers game. So some contracts you're going to look at and be a bit like, but if your plan is to stack numbers as well, like I have tracks that I have 20% on, 8% on some of them, because if me and another writer that I work closely with are building something together, we try and make sure that there's a spot for each other just to be able to eat on that. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's about building that foundation as well, and just good working relationships, and just try and, if you're easy to work with and you don't make these people's life difficult, they'll keep coming back to you. If you like, and if you can break through that part where it's someone you've done one job for, then you've done a few jobs for, then you're having a laugh with them every time they call you, then you're at a different point. That's where you want to get. You don't want to always be like, because we don't get into music to be Mr. Businessman. Do you know what I mean? Go and be a businessman. Like, this is the point, and this is meant to be fun as well. Like, that's why we take on the weird forms of stress that come with it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's because we want the lifestyle element and we want to be able to do this every day. And yeah, I just think all those things, psychological things, come into play with any of this stuff. So 100%. I think that's important to actually bear in mind as well when approaching people and doing the work. And if you get a chance with someone to, like, I'll hit vocalists up. I'm like, we always need vocals. I try and be like super open-ended with it, but they sometimes are still lost in their artist thing a little bit, and they don't ruin their chances of doing something else, and it's just like they kind of miss it. I don't know. There's all that kind of behavior. Just discourage that. Just make yourself super easy to work with, and open, and be willing to turn it around. Don't expect to get into it and be able to sit on something for weeks and weeks and weeks. If you really are about trying to do something in music, you turn in, unless you've got like something going on or like another super important commitment. Like if someone hits me up about a brief, like a lot of things get moved to the side. You know what I mean? Like that has to come now. And then if some people can't make that, if a job gets in the way, you know, it's an unfortunate problem or whatever. But if it's just because you've got something planned that's kind of movable, or do you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff, that it has to take priority a lot of the time, just to show willing and just to build that habit as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. 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 Big time. And they like sometimes I've had people where they like play business. It's almost like they've put on a costume, and it's like, why are we doing this playtime bit? Like, and then they don't get blacklisted, but like I'm less keen to reach out to them. The label who we've worked with are pissed off with them. They kind of are just like, we'll pull the track then. I'm just like, well, the track gets pulled. Like we either, all this work we've done, and usually all this work I've done, because sometimes this comes at a point where I've ran off. Because, you know, if they take your track, it's like, great, now we need 60-second edit, instrumental, underscore, 40-second edit, instrumental, underscore, stems, alternate versions. Like the work doesn't stop. It's like right, it's going to exist, so it's worth doing this next bit of work now. But the collaborator sometimes, or the vocalist sometimes, they don't appreciate that, which makes me as the producer and the person that brought the thing to the table, that could be a thing that you're bragging about in a few weeks, when, you know, if it goes on something, all of a sudden it makes your artist brand look great, because all of a sudden it's like on a Brit Awards advert or something. Do you know what I mean? So, and to the people, they just see, oh, that's a big movement. Do you know what I mean? Even though it's coming in a different way, it's just more leverage to support your brand. But then people sometimes turn at the last minute and make it difficult, and it's like, I'm already like saying you can have 50% on something that you spent 2 hours on, and never thought about again, and now you're like getting your stepdad to pretend to be a lawyer on an email. Like, fucking, let's just get it over the line, do another one.
Boys, I'm real sorry, but I'm gonna have to bounce because I've got to be somewhere in 15 minutes.
No, it's all good, man.
So I'll have to wrap it up, but man, I really appreciate that. I think that was interesting. It gives people a different perspective on the whole music industry.
Hopefully it was somehow, you know, useful. I think when you go and search a lot of this stuff out on the internet, it's quite Americanized. It's quite, and the American space in sync does work a bit different. Like there is some differences that I'm still learning with that. Like, I can't speak on authority. I'm like, know how the UK and Europe works a little bit better with this stuff. And America, there's a lot more talk about non-exclusive deals and da-da-da-da. I've not had so much of that kind of stuff when it comes to sync libraries. But hopefully it's useful. And there's some stuff in there, like I say, go and, if you're interested in it, go to listen to like Universal, listen to their catalog and just kind of get a feel for what it is. Because it's achievable. It's very much achievable, but you've got to lock in on it.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, man. We'll share links to your socials and everything in the description.
Yeah, cool, man.
So yeah, appreciate your time, bro. Appreciate everyone for listening as well. So see you all in the next one.